Hello and welcome to the Commando Cast. I'm Andrew.
I'm Mike.
And today we're talking about the early ATG meta, moving beyond draft and starting to talk about what decks we think are going to make an impact in the constructed tournament scene going forward. All right, so Mike and I had a plan today. We were going to talk about our top 3 decks. We were going to bring 3 decks and talk about our top 3 decks that we thought were going to make an impact in the meta. But what happened today, Mike?
Oh, what happened today? French Nationals, Thrawn Snoke, Apocalypse.
So what? So Thrawn Snoke won it, or what?
The 7 of the top 8 decks at French Nationals, I'm sure courtesy of Your Destiny, were in the top 8. So 7 of the 8 were Thrawn Snoke vehicle spamming decks.
Yep, so with that, we're going to take this, get rid of it. So, Mike, what does the meta look like right now? And actually, I should rephrase that. What is the state of Destiny right now? What do you see it as?
The game, for me, as a deck tuner, feels very strong because it feels like we're already late meta. I feel like this set spoon-fed a lot of synergies to us. There was a lot of just out-of-the-box Han, Kira, almost tribal decks for Magic. Like they just gave you, here's 10 cards that need to go together, and you can automatically just be ready to compete at a B level or a level 2 or tier 2 deck level just right out of the box.
Sure. So, do you think that's because of just mods being so obviously straightforward?
Right. Yeah, because you can't play mods without vehicles. So then there's already a well-established vehicle meta. So it just made established vehicle decks that much better.
Well, so that's an interesting statement, right? Because as far as there being a well-established vehicle meta, I think the decks that we're seeing aren't necessarily that, right? I mean, it used to be you'd run 4 wides, you'd run 2 and 3 cost vehicles, you'd get 40 of them on the board, and then you'd just take somebody out in one turn. And I think a lot of the decks we're seeing right now, a lot of them use armored reinforcement. You just have one vehicle.
Right. Yeah, a great example of this, speaking of decks that maybe aren't Thrawn Snoke, is the Mauler Mythal Iden Versio.
The deck Cole was running 2 weeks
correct.
ago.
Yeah, the deck.
To be clear, it's not Cole's deck. There's mountable versions online, but
right. Same thing. You run 27 points. You run armored reinforcements. You're digging for black 2 immediately, or whatever your deck of choices or your vehicle of choices, and you hit the board with it. It immediately puts pressure on your opponent. Where it used to take vehicles, by round 2, you would try to have your board state set up. Now with the new tech that we have, it's like round 1 board state.
Right. Well, so that's the new. You can now run an aggro deck that has a vehicle, right? But I don't know that that's fair. So would you call that a vehicle deck? I mean, not in the traditional sense, I suppose. But
it's almost. I mean, it really is an aggro deck. It just instead of having a blaster pistol or a sword, laser sword, it's got a 3 TIE fighters.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, that's the difference. So,
right.
All right. So yeah, let's go back to that. Right. I mean, the whole Thrawn Snoke thing. So, do you believe that Snoke? Do you believe that Snoke was originally designed to be able to make 8 resources turn 1? And if so, why?
I don't think it was. Mainly because I think at the time when Thrawn Snoke was being tested, and when Thrawn at the Empire War meta vehicle, they gave us all these vehicles, right? But the vehicles were so slow that no one could play them, right? It was so hard to get your board state. There was I'm trying to remember a dominant vehicle deck in the Empire War that wasn't cheating.
We used to see red, yellow, 4 white, Guavian troopers, and but those decks were never super effective, right?
Yeah, so it almost feels like if they did plan on that, if they did plan on Snoke being able to hit Thrawn for 4 resources round 1, it seems like a pretty big overreaction, or overcorrection is probably the correct term for that.
So let me ask you this, right? I mean, obviously, there's 2 real plays with the current Thrawn Snoke deck, right? Or I should say, main plays. You either try to get your 4 ties down ASAP, or you get a fist out, right? I mean, that's pretty much your turn 1 setup, right? So is TIE Fighter and is Vader's Fist the problem? Or is it simply just the chance cube focus issue?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the focus. I think the true problem is probably the focus, because with 4 dice that all have focus sides,
one focus side and 2 focus sides on every die.
Yeah, you're going to hit it, and it takes a lot of the chance out of the game, and it says, unless your opponent spends their own resources to set up their board state, so they can't set up their own board state because they have to stop you, you're going to get such a large lead on them in board state that you win. So the problem is the focus assures that it takes the whole dice portion out of the game. And I think that's why that deck is so attractive to competitive level players. Because any competitive level player in any game, they immediately try to take the randomness out of the game. They want to assure it. Resources, damage, they want to fix that. And that's a great strategy. But that's why the deck is so attractive. And that's the real problem is the 4 dice with focus sides, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. So is that how you stop it then? I mean, you kind of went into that already. Do you just say these 2 alone can do 4 indirect damage to me per turn if you use both Snoke die, and then just use everything you can to stop them from ramping, even if you don't drop anything yourself? Because it seems like you're still going to lose that battle by like turn 3. They're finally going to get something out, right?
I don't think it's a fight you can win on a resource level. Like, I don't think the key to stopping Thrawn Snoke is to try to remove their resources. I think the real hurtful thing to a Thrawn Snoke player is their cards in hand and in deck. I think you've pointed that out before. Like, that's the true way you fight that is you take the 2. Like, they can have 25 resources, but if they have no cards to play, that money's useless.
Sure. Yeah. So, Jyn Cassian mill, right? Or we should say Jyn Cassian taking the mill angle.
Right.
I think does put that in a rough spot. But then that can bring us to, I guess, our next topic is Jyn Cassian. I mean, to me, that deck seems pretty good.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I don't know if you should use the word oppressive, but it seems pretty strong.
Yeah, anytime you take away your opponent's ability to play the game, it creates bad feelings. Like, no, like you're there to roll in big chunky colorful dice and play Darth Vader. You're not there for your opponent to look through your hand and take your best card. I mean, that's it is oppressive is probably a good word. I think it doesn't look that oppressive because of Thrawn Snoke. Like, that to me is oppressive. Yeah, like if Snoke gets a balance of the Force, which I personally think is required at this point, and I'm not just saying that in reaction to the French nationals. I'm just saying
that discussion's been happening in many different forums for a long time.
We've had now a full 5 months of Snoke.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean we have seen him pair with every single deck, and his real problem is when he's got 2 dice. So I think if you give him 1 point and you make the player play with a single Snoke die and 2 Thrawn, I think the deck still functions, but it is less assured.
Yeah, but we have Bitter Rivalry, or, I mean, obviously with the TIE Fighter version, you're not going to play, well, you can't play Solidarity.
Right.
So.
Bitter Rivalry.
You can Bitter Rivalry.
Right, and that's fine. I don't mind that, because then the Snoke player, the Snoke Thrawn player, is having to pay a steep cost for that. And that 2 damage is, I think, pretty impactful, because I've lost many games.
Is it though? Because, I mean, even if you aggro Thrawn down, as long as they can get the first turn, as long as they can Snoke Thrawn 1 time, first turn, they've kind of done what they need to do. Now, granted, him being able to steal a card every turn is obviously phenomenal.
Right. And to me, and it's not the only problem with Thrawn Snoke, but the Grand Moff play is that if your opponent gets a Grand Moff down, you're basically rolling out, and if you hit damage and they don't have removal, you get to hit them.
Sure.
And if you roll out and don't get anything, if they remove any of your dice, or if you don't roll well and have to discard a card to reroll, your round is over.
So because that's interesting. So we had our first Monday Night Dice, the Smugglers Run on Standard Tournament this last Monday, and we had 2 Thrawn Snoke players there. Both of them did relatively well in the tournament. Both of them were running the Grand Moff, and in all of the games that you can see on the Dice Commando channel, Grand Moff didn't hit the table 1 time.
Right.
Because when you get Fist out, rolls in 3 times. I mean, it doesn't matter unless you have 3 removal cards in your hand.
Do you have the game up with Eric?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you talk to Eric about that game, he had a choice in that game. I think round 1, where he has an opportunity to play the Fist or the Grand Moff.
That's true. Yes, yeah. I believe so.
Yeah. He plays the Fist down, I believe, instead of the Grand Moff. And Eric, by the way, is one of our team members, and he will tell you that he feels like that was the wrong play, because the Fist is fantastic, but it does have 3 pay sides, so it's easy for the dice to get stranded on the table.
Right.
Where you
and I believe that's actually what happened.
Right. Whereas the Moff coming out immediately puts hand pressure on your opponent, and
I see. That's fair.
I think in the third set of any block, your cards that you have, especially now we have the largest card pool ever. Every single card is super important. So I think that was I don't think that the Fist coming out is the right play in round 1. I mean, if you have enough to get it and resolve it 3 times, if it hits the pay sides, great. But I don't know if that's the right play. Yeah. So I think the Grand Moff is the better round 1 play.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. So then, let's move into the actual strategy portion of this instead of just the complaining part. And how do you beat Thrawn Snoke? I mean, we touched on it with Jyn Cassian. That's kind of its own little problem. I mean, is the only way to beat Thrawn Snoke Mill? Because that seems like a meta that a lot of people probably don't want to be in.
I think you can. I think you can, focus down Thrawn. Or Snoke. I've seen you play. Your target of preference is normally Snoke.
No, it's Thrawn.
Oh, it is Thrawn. Okay, yeah. So some people, I always
because
attack,
of the Grand Moff.
Right, yeah. I always attack Thrawn just because of the Grand Moff. Also, if they're going to do damage to themselves, you might as well help them out. Right?
No, I agree. Plus him taking that 1 card every turn.
I think if this was a normal meta without the French national at the very beginning of it, I think we would probably be in the same cadence we've always been, which is people get their new cards. The easiest thing to do is you run out hard aggro, lots of guns, lots of sticks, and you hit people, and then people that try to play mid-rangey or janky decks kind of get killed right off the table because their strategy takes time. They don't know how to do it yet. And then as the meta goes on, the mid-range decks and late-range decks kind of take over. So I think because of the National and because there's been some focus with Your Destiny talking about Thrawn Snoke. I don't know if you've heard their podcast, but they've been talking about it for the last two podcasts. So I mean, it was out there, and it's not hard to figure out how to add 4 TIE fighters to Thrawn Snoke.
Right. I mean, that's basically the only change that's been made. But that is not. I wouldn't consider that to be hard aggro.
Thrawn Snoke.
Right.
No, correct. I'm saying I think there are decks that I think you brought Pohan.
Pohan is what I want
right.
with, yeah.
And I think that is a classic example of the hardest aggro, right? It's like the deck that people loved to play in the last meta, which was it was Phasma and Boba Fett. Right.
Oh yeah.
Classic hard aggro. Right. I got 3 sides that do damage to you on 4 dice.
And roll good or you don't.
Right.
And I'm gonna roll good or you don't. You
right. So I think we would be seeing more of that had it not been this national had been right at the beginning of the meta, where people were instantly like, "What's the best deck we can take that's already good and add these few cards to it to make it even better." I don't necessarily think Thrawn Snoke will be the best deck ever, the entire meta. I think it was at this moment because it was the easiest one to convert with the newest cards.
So do you expect to see Mill popping up?
Yes.
I
do. Yeah. And if you remember, Mill chased away all those vehicle decks, like in the last meta, in the legacies and across the way the Force meta. The Mill chased away all the vehicle decks, and then in response to that, it was the mid-range decks that came in.
So you think everything's actually going to work itself out? I mean, because we all know that hard aggro goes right for Mill's throat, right? Generally.
Right.
So then you've got your rock, paper, scissors, Lizard, and Spock.
Right.
Mike, Andrew, whatever, even if it's a 7-way. I don't know. So then the next group we need to talk about is these OTK versions. And that, to be clear, I don't want to go into the whole rulings, Qui-Gon looping, which has been solved. That's not where we're going. Point is, right, we've got, there's at least 2 big ones that I know. There's the Shadowcaster reset, which is
yeah. Actually, can you? I actually am not real familiar with that. So can you give a little background on how that one works?
Sure. So and actually that's what Alex brought to Gongai yesterday.
Right. Okay.
Now to be clear, it's not typically. So it's not OTK in that you win on the first turn, right? It's OTK in that you basically win in. Actually, the Shadowcaster reset, to be fair, is probably not a straight OTK. It pretty much just gets you by like turn 3 when it keeps resetting. So the way it works is it plays L3-3 Elite and then 2 Engineers, Armored Reinforcement, and then Weapons Factory. Even if you don't claim, that deck makes enough money that it doesn't really matter. You can kind of find that fourth dollar. You drop the Shadowcaster, you drop 2 of the R2 units, which are the zero cost hero. I'll put it up.
Right, it's a great card, right?
Cost hero, and for 2 you can reset. It basically has Sienna Ree's ability on a mod,
right?
Which in of itself is fine, but the Shadowcaster has the ability that it's got all these huge sides, but they're pay sides, but every pay side is reduced by the number of mods on it. So that's what he did in my game versus me yesterday. It was Shadowcaster, R2 unit, which you just pull, even if you don't draw them, your engineers are going to find them.
Right.
So then he was able to flip to the 5 indirect for 2 on turn 1, and that was his ramp turn. And then after that, you can roll it in. You can either use your R2 units to ready it, or you can use strategic planning to ready it, or any number of other cards. Those are the big plays, right? So you can easily get Shadowcaster in 3 times on turn 2.
It's almost like a hero Vader's Fist.
In a way, except that its die can also be protected by triple laser turret.
That card is
right. So
that card is brutal.
Triple laser turret will again flash the card up, but triple laser turret, as long as its die is in the pool, you cannot remove the ship to which it's attached die. And when that ship hits for 6 for free, that's pretty good.
Right.
So I think a pretty average player can construct how that deck goes. Right. You pretty much put dorsal turret, TLT. I don't even think you need to bother to run what's the yellow Electrocaster?
Is it Arcaster?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think you even need to bother to run that. You just run the R2 units, the dorsal, the TLT.
And that's kind of
put all your indirect on Leet, because when she dies, she moves, and then that's it, right? So
I would just like to say how much I love L3 as a design concept. Right. I know there's some question about whether she counts as a character once she's been defeated.
They'll work that out. Obviously, if you kill her, she'll count. Right. They'll work that out.
I mean, it is before she's defeated.
Clear, in the current rules, it does probably more indicate that when she moves, that damage gets lost from a tiebreaker point of view. They'll fix it. Right. Yeah. That's clearly wrong.
I just want to say that, I mean, people are complaining a little bit, and I've been guilty of that too, complaining a little bit here and there about the state of the game that we've been talking about. But I mean, if you really look at the design concepts that Jeremy and his team have done, it's amazing. Like it just the depth of the strategy that they're putting in with these concepts. I think because the game is mature. It's not super mature, but it is mature, and the players playing it are not like, this isn't their first rodeo. Like most of these players have been breaking games since the early aughts. Like I just think that they put this stuff in, and it's really genius, and it takes us like 4.7 seconds to figure out how to abuse it. Which is, I don't necessarily think is an indication of a bad design. I think it's an indication of a player base that's passionate, that studies the game, like in their free time, talks about it. And we're in the age now where when you go talk about a game, you're not talking with the same 3 guys anymore. You're talking with hundreds of thousands of people in a community. Or in the case of like Artificery, they've got hundreds of people in a Discord server who get together and just do nothing but talk strategy. So it's
strategy. Or trash talk.
Or trash talk, right? But either way, I don't think it's a bad thing that we are abusing these cards so much. I just think it's an indication that we're passionate about it. I do think it means someone has to be an adult in the room.
By abuse, you don't mean you mean finding the advantageous combos. You don't mean being like, haha, I have my recycling Qui-Gon potential.
Right. Yeah, I mean like figuring out a way to make cards stretch past what necessarily is written on the card. And by the way, I think we have some excellent players in our community that are fantastic about this. And that's evidenced by the fact anytime I come up with a new play format for our Monday Night Dice, there are several people that take it upon themselves to immediately pour beer on that and figure out a way to destroy it. And it's fun though. Like it makes me, I mean, I get a little salty at first, but what it really does is it shows that I am probably the dumbest person in my play group sometimes. And that's a good thing because it means that my teammates are really helpful.
I think the only bad experience we had on that was when we tried the hero mode. That was
don't do that.
Other than
Sorry.
that,
Yeah, it's really
highly recommended don't do hero mode. Okay, so fair enough. So the other OTK, so we already talked about Shadowcaster,
right?
And then there's obviously the X-Wing OTK deck out there, which is the draw your whole, another one of these draw your whole deck in one turn versions. And then, I mean, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. So you run Leet, 2 Gungans for your red for award ceremony, and then you run Ezra, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I've seen.
And then with that, so that's 8, 8, 6, 6, and then that gives you enough room for double dealing the 2-point plot. So you can run 2 long cons and your extra, 3 long cons for the extra long con, and then the 5th X-Wing. So that way you can earn, you chuck your long con, you at least have at the very minimum $6 from the 2 additional long cons that can help you with your card drawing. You run 3PO so that 3PO can turn an X-Wing into money, and then you get a bunch of X-Wings on the table.
And this is a true 1 round, 1 turn kill deck. So this is the Artcaster is. I don't think Artcaster.
The Shadowcaster.
The Shadowcaster. I don't think the Shadowcaster like ruins the spirit of the game, because it can be removed in handling. You go on to round 2, right? I mean, it's just this type of deck though, where you're drawing the entire deck into 4, because you really only need 4, right? You like if you get 4 X-Wings out and 1 gets binned for some reason, you're still gonna win that game. I mean,
sure.
I mean, you're doing
well. I mean.
Maybe not turn 1, but
I think the key is that you need to use one of them to 3PO to get the others out. Right. So I think you still want the 4 because of what you're talking about. That deck and decks like it, where you're drawing your whole hand, I think that's not playing Destiny, and that needs to be addressed I think
from
the
a rules.
majority of the community, except for probably the people who have that deck built right now, would agree with you, right? And then there's, I haven't seen this one personally, but there's also a 1 round ORM, 1 round mill deck out there that supposedly uses Leia Bouche, and then runs a whole bunch of the hero combo. So then you can run, you run Leia Bouche double dealing, and then you can do long con, and then you have a buyout and some other stuff.
For maximum salt in your community, please run the Leia Bouche 1 round mill deck. That will, if you're tired of Destiny, you want to move on to another game, just start bringing that deck to your locals.
Fair enough. Yeah. So there's that, and from a state of the game, state of the meta, I think our discussion's become very clear. That's not healthy.
Right.
That's a bad thing.
I want to say that, by the way, those decks got so annoying to me at one point that I started running Snoke Tarkin. For no other reason, because the deck's not that good, but it absolutely murders the 1 turn kill decks. So for like 2 weeks straight, I just did nothing but run that deck, and I would capture the occasional win by indirect damage, but I was really there just to foil the 1 turn kill decks.
But then again, you can make the counter argument that if people are starting, even if there's a silver bullet to every deck, which at this point there basically is,
I would say so,
right? But if you're at the point where people have to start packing 3 or 4 silver bullets to get to round 2 without taking 1 round mill to the face or 1 round turn kill to the face, I think a lot of people would argue that that's also not a healthy meta. So
I'll also like to point out that sideboarding, which may be another podcast that we put together, and I just want to thank Bobby Sapphire for coming up with the idea of sideboarding in the first place, and I only borrowed it. I think it fixes a lot of those problems, and it allows people to be more experimental with their deck building. Like they don't have to feel like, okay, I've got to run this one deck because it has the fewest weaknesses against all the other decks. So that's another. Well, I could talk for an hour and a half on that. But
completely fair. So before we get talking too long and down too much the rat hole, so we've already talked about kind of. I think our opinions on the meta are pretty clear. So what's your favorite deck? Spoiler alert: what are you bringing to Monday Night Dice?
Okay, so it's not my favorite deck, but the deck I'm going to bring, I believe, is going to be a single die L3, Elite Yoda, Gungan Warrior, Armored Reinforcements, with rocket launchers and rocket launchers and the Naboo fighter. I think is got some good sides. It's kind of a take on. I mean, it's a little drive-by with some bigger stuff, but I think it'd be a good foil for. I'm not saying it's gonna. Don't take this to a regional. By the way, it's something to play with, and I think it'll be good in the vehicle meta. And I love shooting Eric's vehicles out of sky. Yeah. So that to me is fun.
Fair enough. So that's an interesting lead-in. Regionals are basically here. In a couple weeks, they're going to start. Ours in Portland is not until February, so several months away. Maybe next set, even? Maybe. But what do you think is going to make a splash? Do you think it's going to be more? I mean, Thrawn Snoke's not going away. Like, even if they do something, I don't think it's going away, right? The TIE Fighter's just too strong. Right. Vader's Fist. I think the jury's still out on Vader's Fist for me. But TIE Fighter with droid tanks is pretty good. So anyway, what do you think is going to make a splash there? So we've already talked about Thrawn, Snoke, Jyn Kazum.
Well, yeah, I would say...
What's your take on Kylo right now?
Kylo's always the forgotten boogeyman, right? Like, I think Kylo exists really for one thing, is when someone starts playing mono, like if mono starts becoming popular again, Kylo's just there to come in and you clean up, 5 or 6 games just by showing up because you ran Kylo that day. So as far as regional goes, I don't know if you guys know this, but Yoda's a pretty good character, and
we're not seeing a lot of Hero Blue right now at all.
Special chaining, I think, or I think a shield deck, because one of the things that the Thrawn decks and the vehicles do is a lot of indirect. Even the TIE fighters, I think they have a 2 and it's a 1 ranged, a +2 ranged, and a 2 indirect. Yeah, so I think shields again are going to. Shields are good. I think the Qui-Gon Yoda, the new Qui-Gon Yoda with Solidarity, I think it's got a lot. You just run all the really high value, high cost, unique cards and lightsaber. Well, you play a lightsaber pool, so it it
helps out.
Yeah, you run 10, and you don't care which one you get, and then you just take a bunch of shields and do a bunch of damage. I think that's But
then there comes Kylo, right?
Right, so, there comes Kylo, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So I think the Kylo price deck still has legs. Right. It didn't really get many toys. It did the treasured lightsaber. I think actually replaces Shoto in that deck because it's got the special that she can flip into if she needs to. Right. Her being price, of course. So I think that deck's still out there. It didn't really get many, except for Conflicted, which is an amazing comment, right? That's like fantastic for Kylo.
Yeah. If you think about the value of that card for 1 cost, you get like say on Kylo, you get something because it's damage. You get damage, 2 damage. Anything else though?
Shields.
And even a blank. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for 1, if you told me, Mike, here's a card that you pay 1 and you get 2 shields, I would be like, that's a decent card. They had a card like that in Awakenings.
It was been reprinted.
Yeah,
they've reprinted the 2-player.
Yeah, so I mean that's
defensive position.
Right. The problem with defensive position is that it's a card that only does one thing. Right. Conflicted is a lightsaber throw mixed in with a defensive stance.
Well, and let's not forget, you actually get to reroll.
Right. Yes, correct. So that could be the best card. That could be the best event in the set. I don't. Hot take. Yeah, I mean it's that good.
Act of Treason is pretty good.
Act of Treason.
That's one where you do 1, everybody's damaged, and then they just.
Oh, Act of Cruelty.
Oh, sorry.
Act of Cruelty. Yes. Okay. Yeah. That also.
Act of Treason's a red magic card.
Yeah, Act of Cruelty is also pretty good. I just think Act of Cruelty has a very specific spot in your game plan. Like you want everyone to have damage, and you want someone to be at 1 health, right? So you could hit them with it. And I just think
that's ideal. But I mean. No Survivors was played by multiple decks. I ran No Survivors in my Afra decks before, which also we're not seeing any Afra anywhere anymore. So I'm going to skip topic. But
okay.
So Vader.
Okay.
Vader's still a thing.
Sure.
I think everybody's using the term gatekeeper, and I think that's fair. Right. Everybody was scared of running 3 wide because of Vader, or because of Fear of Dead Men, really.
Right.
And We haven't seen Vader in any one of our tournaments yet.
Yeah, not one, which is
now
strange.
We're starting to see people doing 3 wide. So does Vader come back?
I think Vader does come back, and I think when Vader hits a couple locals and he rips the place up, then everyone will freak out, like, oh, it's broken. But it's not. I think Vader is very counterable. I saw someone, I think it was
I think that's why no one's playing him, is I think most people agree that he's counterable. You just need to accept that you're going to take 4 every turn.
I think I saw Jackalman Games played a version that I thought was amazing, and it was Elite Darth Vader, new Darth Vader, and a Jawa. And it was the strangest thing, but it allowed you to play...
that for the draft one that lets
the resourceful.
Yeah.
So it plays resourceful, so you can play resourceful and respite.
Respite too.
Yeah. So you're basically, like, you're not guaranteed, but it's a very good chance that you're going to get the another resource round 1.
And that's just for the 3-cost sabers?
That's for the 3-cost sabers, right. So it just gives you a lot more tools.
Greedo lets you do well-connected, truce. I mean, between the 4 of those, you're going to get something for a turn.
It also runs Theed Palace. So you can Theed, and then...
That battlefield.
Spot the Jawa, take another action, play respite.
I see.
And then you're sitting at 4, and your opponent's over there looking through their first 5 cards still.
Right. Yeah, okay. Interesting.
Okay. Don't take that to regionals. I'm just saying that's interesting.
I don't know. I think Vader, I don't think anyone is under any assumption that Vader is tier 1, right? I don't think anybody's saying that. But I think Vader I don't think Kylo's tier 1, but we've seen Kylo, well, I mean, not in this meta anyway.
Right.
But I don't think that Kylo's tier 1, but I think Kylo could come win a tournament on any given day.
Yeah. 3 damage sides plus 2 damage every time he rolls out, possibly. I mean...
Yeah, we had a old player who hadn't been in for a while show up yesterday with Kylo Grievous, which he's been running for like a year and a half now, and he actually won 2 games yesterday. So,
are we talking like Grievous, like OG Grievous?
13-18 Grievous.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
2-2-3 is not bad. That's a riot baton right there.
9 health. Is it 10 health? Okay, it's still
either way. He's still way too expensive.
Yeah.
With the new cost curve,
if we're still playing this game 3 years from now, the basic characters are gonna have 20 hit points. Like there's just the way they're climbing.
We will have to see in set 7 if there is a clear cost curve step function like was made between Awakening's block and Legacy's block. I mean, there's no contest. I don't think anybody sane can argue that happened. If that happens again, I don't think this game makes it past set 9.
Well, certainly not in the state that it's in now. But I mean, if they keep printing cards like Vader's Fist, they're going to need characters with more life. Otherwise, the game. I mean, like you said, you can get 3 TIE. What's the 4 TIE fighters out can do 8 indirect, right? And that deck, Thrawn Snoke, by the way, has enough resource power to play the Hellfire. I want to say 3 TIE fighters round 1, right? Because it's 4, 6, 8.
So you
10.
You chance cube.
Right.
So let's assume that we roll max everything we want. Sure. Right. So $4 on Thrawn. So that's 6 when you Snoke him.
Right. Plus a 2.
You chance cube, which nets you 2.
Okay.
Right. So that's 6, 8, and then your 2 that you started with is 10. Now, don't forget, and this is where my problem with the design and the playtesting comes in. The TIE Fighter having $1 on it seemed like a really bad design.
Yeah. And it doesn't. I don't think it doesn't feel like it fits thematically. Like the characters that and I know this is some weird card meta here, but the characters that are more, I would say either throwaway characters or characters that are more based on espionage and disruption, generally don't have a resource side. So Jyn, the new Jyn is a perfect example of that, right? Okay. And this goes back to her original card design where they made her super focused on getting into your opponent's hand and disrupting them. So they carried that same concept over to the new card. They left off her resource side, which I thought was a great idea. Right? I mean, sure, her dice is still fantastic.
She's awesome.
But if you think about it thematically, this is not a person who is going to help the rest of your team do better. She is there to get inside of your opponent's hand and disrupt it and hurt it and damage it. So the TIE Fighter design to me feels wrong. I'm curious why they thought that resource side was an important addition to it on that. I don't know if maybe they thought, well, 2 is too high for
honestly,
this die.
I think it was just a counter. I don't think anybody has a problem with the X-Wing having a dollar. Now, to be clear, the X-Wing dollar is not an X, right? It is a dollar. So obviously that was smart. Right, but I think it was really just because if you look at the X-Wing sides, I think it was just a counter to, I think it was just a mirror to the X-Wing.
Yeah, what's funny is, though, unless you only have one X-Wing out, the side you want to see least is the
gun side.
Yeah, the 4th and the 5th side is what you don't want to see after you have 3 of them out. So because they're not X's. If they were like Resource X...
No, that card.
Right.
No.
Right, but I mean...
To be honest, I would bet you a beer that in playtesting, it was like all X's.
That would be...
And then someone was like, no.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think the dollar on TIE Fighter I think was a huge miss, and I thought, obviously when TIE Fighter hit, I thought it was super awesome. I think it's super thematic,
right.
Except I think that it could have gotten the same theme with less impact to the game if it had something similar to the Battle Droid, where when you activate a TIE Fighter, you can activate another TIE Fighter, as opposed to pulling them from your deck, because I think that's what makes a huge difference in Thrawn Snoke. But water under the bridge, cards printed.
Tutoring.
If we get an errata, let's be honest, the speed FFG moves, it'll be next December.
Right.
So
so tutoring is here, and it's not going anywhere. Like that's just the bottom line. If you don't like that portion of the game, I have a feeling it's only going to get. I wouldn't say. I actually like tutoring. I think it adds an interesting aspect, like lightsaber pull, play it, look for a card.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think it still needs to be in a limited aspect because you have 30 card decks.
Right.
But, okay. So anyway, we've gotten off topic again, but
sure.
So I think that's pretty much it for the meta.
Well, I wanted to ask you, what do you think is going to have an impact on regionals? We talked about that a little bit about that. And regionals start as early as what, the first week of December?
I think some people's regionals are like next weekend.
Right. Yeah. So we're going to be in this weird thing where basically the entire meta of Across the Galaxy is going to be a regional meta. Right, high stakes tournaments.
That's fair.
The entire time. So what do you think in this?
Well, but the previous set came out in July, and we were pretty much in Store Championship season the whole time. Finished off with a couple big seasons with Gen Con and I don't know the other one I'm forgetting, but
yeah.
Gen Con and then the North American Championships.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know.
So what do you think about the region? What do you think is going to be the hotness?
I do expect Gen Casting to make a big impact because of its flexibility, especially early. I think later. Let's be clear. A lot of people do play what's popular. So I think that the early ones are going to see a lot of Thrawn Snoke because what's coming out of this. I'm not looking forward to Monday Night Dice having 4 Thrawn Snokes flying around.
Yeah, I think locally we need to, everyone wants to play through new toys, but if you're really trying to build your community, I think at some point the players that are really invested in making everyone have a good time, they need to restrain themselves on playing some of the really hard stuff. And I'm bringing up like Alex, for instance. Hey, Alex. When Alex was dominating our local scene with Seven Sister and Boba Seven Sister, and it was a deck that gave me heart palpitations. Like I felt like I couldn't beat it.
Alex can win. Alex is an exceedingly good player who can win most tournaments with an average deck.
Right.
So when you sit him with a deck like Boba 7, which is like straight up his play style, exactly what he needed, he becomes near unbeatable.
Right. And Alex is he wants to grow the game, and he's a good community member. So he did not run. We did not see Boba 7 Sister for 8 weeks straight.
Long time.
Right. It was like we saw it, we realized it was good, and then we kind of brought that into our private testing chamber and less out into the noobs. You don't want to bring 3 new people to your local and then smash their face with Boba 7, because it feels like you have no chance when you play.
In this case, Thrawn Snoke.
Right, Thrawn Snoke. Right, in this case, Thrawn Snoke.
1 round mill.
Right. Yeah. So just for people that are trying to grow communities, that have discussions with your more experienced players. Like encourage them to bring something that is inventive and fun, and because we all know that Thrawn Snoke's good. Like you're not proving anything
Right.
like with it. I mean, that needs to be tested, I think, in a hyper-competitive environment and then taken to hyper-competitive tournaments, like not to your locals.
I mean, and to that end, when we used to play at that other shop that we don't play at anymore,
Correct.
right? We used to kind of have a gentleman's agreement that if you were to win a tournament one week, you would not bring that same deck to the tournament the next week.
Right.
Right. So you can find out what's good. I mean, most of us kind of just, we didn't even really ever sit down and like have the talk. It was just kind of the way it was, right? And I think that's the way that you build the community, is not seeing the same deck 19 times. But there's probably people out there who are thinking that we're complete idiots for talking about that, because why would you not want to punch your buddy in the face over and over again?
Right.
But I just do, from my perspective, from a growing the community perspective, I just want to tell everybody that, if you want to punch everybody in the face and have someone sit across from you and enjoy how amazing you are while they sit there and watch you build your board, eventually you're not going to have anybody to play with. So.
And there it is. Like, that's the thing. Like, eventually you're not going to have anyone to play with. And either it's going to be a microcosm of that where just no one wants to talk to you, or it's going to be, you could actually dry up your local scene with that stuff. So anyway, no, enough preaching. I offer a soapbox.
But yeah, so I think Jin Cassian coming back. I think Jin Cassian's here to stay. Jin Cassian uses what? I mean, aside from Commando Raid, it just uses, Second Chance. Second Chance and Commando Raid. I'm pretty sure both of those cards aren't going to be reprinted in set 7. Right. Like, I'm pretty sure that's a safe bet.
Yeah, oh God, especially
Unless I'm
now.
not drinking some Kool-Aid that they are, right? But,
right.
I don't think Second Chance is coming back.
Right.
So, but other than that deck's here to stay for the next year.
Yeah, my version of
Learn how
the
to play against that deck, folks.
My version right now, the entire upgrade suite, except for Second Chance, is all Legacy and newer. Like, I'm not running, and I know your version's a little more.
I run Holdout.
Yeah, you're running faster guns, and I'm running.
I hope Holdout gets reprinted.
Right. I will tell you interesting about Cassian and Jin. Every game I've tried to mill with that deck, I've lost. And half the games where I have tried to kill my opponent, I've actually milled them for the win, as opposed to killing them. So when I try to mill,
is that just a Force Illusion fact? Or?
I think when you mill with that deck, it has a hard time getting the last few cards out of their hand and then ending the round. So that it's the old, what's the old villain card? Lying in Wait, right? Like, where you would lie in wait to finish them off. Like, there's it has a little bit of a hard time doing that unless you really tech towards the mill. And then I think the deck loses a lot of its flexibility and utility, which makes it strong. Your opponent has no idea what you're going to do to them. Like, all they know is they're going to lose their best card of the next 3.
Or 2.
Or 2, right? Yeah, if I'm... Because you're going to stack that, and then you're going to mill, right, off the top of that. So it just, it has so much utility when I think you build it to kill, and then you can also mill. Yeah,
I think that's the case. Now, to counter that, I think the weakness of the deck is one of my favorite statements. I don't remember where I heard it, but Jack of all trades, master of none. Right? So that deck's versatility, I think, under a good pilot, gives it a lot of strength. But there's a lot of good pilots out in the Destiny world, and when they're running something that's more focused, I don't know that deck's going to be able to close.
Right.
So we will see. Again, I think that deck's going to be... I think there's going to be a ton of them in top 8. I don't know that it's going to be winning, is the thing. I think it's real hard for any deck to deal with 4 TIE fighters on turn 1.
Yeah, that is...
I mean...
Yeah, right. In not only 4 TIE fighters, but 4 TIE fighters, you can probably turn 2 of the dice to whatever side you want. Yeah. And in later turns, you turn all the dice.
Well, I mean, that deck, I think mostly... I don't think that deck does any damage turn 1.
The Thrawn Snoke.
Maybe a couple indirects, right? But because I think that, like, if that TIE fighter rolls $1, you're taking the $1.
Yeah, you don't even care. I mean, you don't care.
So, I mean, it's really all about turn 2 there. But yeah, I mean, what you mentioned about Grand Moff's interesting too. I don't know. So we're gonna have to see where this meta goes with Thrawn Snoke, because that seems like
I'm really pulling for a balance of the Force. I think it needs it, and I think the deck would still be good with that with a single die.
So that's interesting. So let's spend 2 minutes and then we'll get out of here, right? So so balance of the Force. You've implied that you expect a +1 on Snoke and a +1 on Yoda. Because I don't know about Yoda personally.
I don't know if I expect it. I don't expect anything at this point. Like, I'm expecting a rules reference guide for 2 weeks, and
Yeah,
I haven't got that.
that's a sore subject. Let's not go there.
But I think
Don't worry, they updated the Reddit. It's cool.
Right? Yeah. I think it requires a +1 on Snoke, and I think because of that, I don't think that you can not hit Yoda.
But here's the rub, right? FFG has demonstrated that they're not able to do things quickly. And maybe that's the mouse, whatever. I'm not blaming anybody in particular, right? But they're not going to make a balance of the Force because of what happened last weekend. They're going to use the claim, we want to sit on it for meta. So if we get a balance of the Force, this would have had to have been happening already. So
Would you say weeks ago or months ago?
we don't have an RNG yet. They've known what the release date was since August.
And they've been playing with these cards for at least the last 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, we know from the timelines that they've given us that it takes at least 6 months once these cards go to print, or for the cards to go to print to release, which means they were testing it before that. So even if you want to make the argument that Snoke wasn't play tested for dollars, which to make dollars I think probably was the case, let's assume midway through the Way of the Force meta, they identified there was a problem. Probably at that point it was both Yoda and Snoke.
Mm-hmm.
+1 on each of them.
Yeah, I think that's probably the...
I mean, we didn't get the +1 on Isla until after, maybe it was right before the release. Either way, but we were basically all the way through the meta.
And that was a broken character.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was actually surprised Talisman didn't come as well.
Yeah. I think because of more of the state of the villain meta at the time, when Legacies came out, Legacies really added a lot of cool life to the villain meta.
Yeah.
And I think she was necessary for that. If she's 10 points instead of 9 or 10 health instead of 9 health, that card is just like...
Oh, her at 9 health is...
Right, it's because she actually get waxed off the table with several decks. Yeah. I remember running that against the Boba 7th, and there were many a game where I would lose her turn 1.
Sure.
Like, it was very possible.
So, yes.
I agree.
We expect a balance of the Force. The question of when, I'm not hopeful.
Yeah. So I would say...
If it's a reaction to the French Nationals, which, to be clear, I don't think that Jeremy would make that decision because I don't think there's enough data. Like, I don't think that's if he's making it based solely on last weekend or this weekend, I don't think that's smart, and I don't think he would do that. If it's going to come, I think it would have had to have been based on what we've already seen. And I don't know, was Snoke that oppressive?
We also don't know the cards that are coming down in the next sets, and maybe there is something that says we don't want to nerf Snoke because of these cards coming later on. But I will also say, Balance of the Force, specifically when they made the holocrons,
can be reversed.
Correct, and that was the whole point. Is that I thought they were going to be able to adjust these to make cards that were too powerful, less powerful.
They already did. They removed it on Uncard.
Right. I actually would like to see them even have like -1 point values on some of the cards. I don't know if that's even testable.
No, because you can't minus a character below where it was tested at because it exponentially opens the combos. There's just no reason for a playtester or for a game designer to put yourself in that situation.
But I want it.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. All right.
So, and hashtag free FN. FN needs to go back to where he was before with the overwrite rule. Yeah. Anyway, but he's got about 2 months left on his lifetime anyway, so.
I'd love to talk about rotation. All right. Maybe we can put that in our
that's definitely
future
going to
discussion.
be another one, but not now.
Okay.
We're way over our time.
I'm sorry.
So.
My beer also is empty.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so we're going to wrap up today, so let us know in the comments what you guys think about, just the show. We want your feedback. We want to do topics that you guys want, and also what you guys think about the meta, what you guys are seeing in your own local metas, right? Local meta and world meta, and what we're seeing are 3 different things.
Right.
So let us know, help us to grow the game, and we'll catch you later. Anything to add before you go?
Go Commando.
Go Commando. Thanks for watching.